Welcome to Glasgow's Full of Beans campaign launch webinar, brought to you by Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, Glasgow Community Food Network's Food and Climate Action Project, and the Glasgow Centre for Population Health. My name is Riika Gonzalez, and I coordinate the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, a multi-sector organization aiming to improve the food system locally. The aim of this event is to launch our local campaign, but first we will hear from other experts about what is happening in the world of beans just now and why beans are so important. And there will be 3 presentations followed by a panel Q&A session. If you have any questions for our speakers today, please use this function and note that this is meant for questions rather than general comments. We will do our very best to answer all of your questions, but we might not be able to do that due to the high number of people attending today. And if you want to tweet about the event during and after the webinar, please use #GlasgowFullOfBeans. I now have the pleasure to introduce you to Kristin Gutekunst, who is project lead of Beans is How, a campaign to double global bean consumption by 2028, mobilized by Sustainable Development Goals 2 Advocacy Hub. Throughout her career, she has had a special focus on campaigning for the Sustainable Development Goals, driving innovations in communications, advocacy, and storytelling. She pioneered the use of new media, XR, and experimental events and exhibits at the United Nations Expo 2020 in Dubai and other influential policy forums. She is now putting all her passion into championing the tiny but mighty bean. Over to you, Kristin.
Thanks so much, Riika, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning, wherever you are. I'm so excited to be here to be a formal partner on the Full of Beans campaign and also to formally welcome the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership as a partner in Beans is How, which I'm excited to be presenting to you today. So thank you to all the beanie friends and soon-to-be beanie friends for joining us. So just to give a little bit of context about why we started this campaign, 3 billion people globally are suffering from malnutrition, with 735 million people who face hunger in 2022. An estimated 71 million more people fell into poverty in 2022 due to surging costs of energy and food. And a third of all food is wasted, with a third of greenhouse gas emissions coming from agriculture. So how can we enjoy meals that don't cost the earth? And how can we promote affordable, delicious, and nutritious food? Well, Beans is How, and we started this campaign, which is a campaign to fix the future by doubling global bean consumption by 2028. And we're inclusive. We include peas and lentils and other pulses and legumes. So how are we organized? We're mobilized by the SDG2 Advocacy Hub, but we are really driven by a network of partners. So the Bean Coalition currently has over 90 partners in 50 countries. We have a Bean Science and Innovation Advisory Council, which has 14 transdisciplinary experts that ensure our communication and advocacy sits on a trusted evidence base. We have a Bean Board that helps guide and steer us, and we have Bean Champions who help uplift our messaging to the masses. In the next 5 years, we aim to make beans visible, desirable, exciting, and to promote them as a climate-smart food that can help fix our future. So in our first year, we actually launched in Egypt at COP27 in November 2022. As I mentioned, 90 partners in 50 countries meeting on a regular basis to talk beans, to get beans on the agenda, to get beans on the menu. And we actually launched a project that is literally trying to do that, just getting more beans on menus across the world. We had our first pilot test in New York City in September around the New York City Climate Week and the UN General Assembly, with 50 restaurants participating. We've had over 20 donated recipes from chefs across the world. We have had 650 pieces of unique earned media. We've had an amazing report, which was generated by the input of many of our partners and our science group, which basically sets out the roadmap about how we will achieve and measure our success in the next 5 years. And we've even won one award, which is the Global Pulse Confederation's inaugural Greenpeace Sustainability Award for Action on the SDGs. So let's back up. Why are we talking about beans? Well, they are a simple, affordable solution to our global financial, health, and climate challenges. And I know everything is listed here, but I'm going to go through and read it to you because it really is, this is the meat of why we care about beans. They're nutrient dense, they're rich in protein and dietary fiber, which is great for our health. They're extremely nutritious, but they also have no cholesterol, are low in fat, and rich in micronutrients. So there's a number of health benefits that they support us with. They're also good for the planet. So incorporating beans into agricultural practices can improve soil and water quality, reduce the need for synthetic fertilizers and help convert atmospheric nitrogen into a plant usable form. So they're fixing our future, literally in that sense. They also are culturally responsive and versatile. So they're in many global cuisines, and you can use them in a variety of different foods, and this is really where our chefs shine in essentially exploring their versatility, exploring the different varieties of beans. There's 38,000 genetic ascensions across the world, and we really want to promote the use of biodiverse beans and also to champion the fact that we need to continue to support investments in research and innovation about beans that can really help with breeding them for drought tolerance, for decreased cooking and cultivation times, etc. So those are some of the messages that we are pushing out as a campaign and that we are championing. So looking at the UK's Eat Well guide, you can see that beans show up as a vegetable in this fruit and vegetables column, and also as a protein. What do you think is the average dried global bean intake per day per capita? Thinking about what the average person is. So I'll give you just a few seconds to go ahead and guess. Is it 5 grams, 12 grams, 21 grams, or 52 grams? So the answer is 21 grams per capita per day. And as you can see from this chart, this varies greatly by region. And it's important to note that actually it's very different in different places. So across the world, we have very, very different average consumptions. It's also very important to note that this data is actually from 2016, and we really don't have timely data that shows us a global perspective on consumption. So this is one of the things we're also championing, is that we really need to have more and better data. So the average recommended intake across various different dietary guidelines is about 100 grams or half a cup. And the other important thing to note is that we are falling short, but it actually isn't that hard to add a bit more beans into your diet. So as I mentioned before, looking at the versatility of beans, so adding some beans on your salad, adding some beans to your breakfast, putting it into sauces and spreads. I haven't personally experimented with putting them into drinks and desserts, but I know that these are really interesting recipes on our website that do that. So do look out for how you can experiment with that. Is there a reason why you aren't eating a half a cup of cooked pulses per day? And if not, what is preventing you? We've got winning between they are difficult or time consuming to cook. I'm worried about flatulence. We also have some people who don't think they're delicious. This could be something that you have to experiment with. I think they're for vegetarians. Some polls actually do show that is a reason, and then other. So 94% of Scottish adults are not consuming enough fiber, with just 6% meeting the recommended Scottish dietary goal intake of 30 grams. So beans can really help to mitigate this from a dietary guidelines perspective. So how can you get involved in Beans is How? Well, we want to create long-term behavior change, and we need to have a multi-pronged effort with collaboration across different sectors, including retail, restaurants, catering, public institutions such as schools, hospitals, and governments, etc. So we are creating a number of different calls to action as well as different initiatives for people to get involved. So here's just a taste of a few. So help us spread bean inspiration. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, formerly known as X, formerly known as Twitter, sorry. We are active there. We also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for, and we have a number of publications, including our Theory of Change, our Beans on the Menu Challenge assets and a schools toolkit, which we have was developed for World Food Day, in which we are continuing to promote to schools about how they can incorporate beans into their programming. This is all available on our website. As I mentioned, we're also doing a lot with trying to put beans into the media. So social media, doing bean myth busting, promoting the facts about beans, and then inviting influencers and other partners to join us in doing this as well. You can also help us inspire more beans on the menu in the kitchens by downloading and sharing recipes and telling food service providers about the Bean Menu Challenge. Advocate for beans at your local eateries or in your own kitchen. If you're a chef, share bean recipes and cooking tips. And I also have to give a big nod to the Chef's Manifesto, who has been one of the primary drivers of this early adopting phase with us. So thanks so much to all the chefs from the Chef's Manifesto Network. You can help to explore bean diversity, try bean-based products, including snacks, dips, spreads, and varieties, plant beans in your garden and buy from local farmers. And finally, advocate for beans. Incorporate beans into your corporate catering, into your next panel, hosted beans exhibits, support development of bean research, articles, and other background resources. And if you work in policy and advocacy, use your expertise and connections to help create an enabling environment by advocating for favorable policies for bean research, investment, and innovation, support for agriculture and farmers, especially smallholder farmers, women, and youth, through capacity building, training, improved seed supply chains, seed sharing and subsidies, and increased recommendations and dietary guidelines in public procurement. So thank you so much. This is my contact details. Feel free to reach out, especially if you're interested to get more involved. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Christine, for that inspiring presentation. I'm possibly even more excited about beans as I was before. Obviously, there, Christine highlighted some amazing reasons that we need to eat beans and reasons for both global and local campaigns. And our next speaker is Lisa Didier from the University, Oxford University Bean Meals Project. Lisa has been working in a public health capacity for over 20 years and is a registered public health practitioner. She has been working for Food for Life Soul Association since 2015 with schools in Leicester City. And the focus of this work is healthy eating, improving the lunchtime experience, and a whole school approach to food. She now works on the Bean Meals Project as an engagement officer as part of the Food Systems Transformation Group. The Bean Meals Project is researching systematic innovation with 2 novel UK pulse crops developed at the Warwick University using a farm to farm approach. And I will let Lisa tell you more about this work.
So yes, it's led by Dr. John Ingram from Oxford University, but there are another 4 universities at the bottom who we are working with, and all around different aspects of the food system. These are the research areas we're looking at. So we've got that local context, looking at the policy environment locally and nationally, and then looking at, mapping the system locally and what's happening in the wider context as well. Directly with schools and families, we've worked with looking at changing behaviours and community uptake of the beans, and looking at upscaling as well and how we can do that. And I'll talk about the beans next as well. So the health benefits we know, but we're looking at the health impacts of improving and adding beans into our diets, and looking at the environmental impacts as well of growing beans and expanding that area in farming. And then looking at especially locally, some of the enterprises that can develop because of the development of, we've got 2 new novel beans. Using that sort of systemic innovation and learning, because it is a research project. And I think the challenge really is how to move towards sort of healthier diet with lower environmental impact, whilst also looking at local national enterprise, and that includes farming as well. So we've got our Professor Eric Holub there and Dr. Roseanne Maguire, and they've developed the Capula and Godiva beans at Warwick University. and they are a type of navy bean, but they've been developed to be grown in the UK environment. So they need a shorter growing time, a shorter sunlight time, which is more predisposed to our climate. All the beans that currently come into the country are grown from elsewhere, Canada, America, China, all sorts. So it's quite, you know, really a novel sort of bean that we've got here, and quite unique. They're quick cooking, and at the moment they're in a dried form, but they don't need overnight soaking. It's 2 hours and then about an hour, 2 hours on the hob, or in a pressure cooker, which I'll talk about later as well. They're gluten-free, they've got the low glycemic index, and as we know, with all beans in farming, they're nitrogen fixing as well. When you think about sort of farming sides, when you look at farming in general, there are farmers who are growing beans, fava beans and other type of beans, but they're growing them for animal feed and not for human consumption. So when we talk about upscaling, we're really looking at how can we use the land and how can we farm differently. And that's something that's happening in one of the farms in Lincolnshire and a farm local to Warwick as well. So instead of taking the farm to fork approach, we're using the fork to farm food systems approach. So we've actually got the beans and we've put them on school menus, and we've given them to households and in the community. And we can do that at that end. And at the other end, obviously, we've got the farm and the farming they're actually growing here in this country. And what the research is looking at is that middle bit, that enterprise, processing, cleaning, different ways of you know, having the beans. Could they be canned? Could they be frozen? And that's the sort of thing that the research will be coming out later this year. And these are the things that we'll be presenting later on. We've got, these are the 6 schools we've been working with, and that's a lovely little poster. In fact, the children took on this project within their school meals, and eating the beans. They really grasped it, and this young pupil who did that poster did a load of posters and put them up all over the school. Was always excited when we were coming in to have a look at what they're eating. So one of the projects in the research areas in school was that we actually put the beans into the school meals. The cooks cooked them, and the research looked at year 4 and year 5. The meals were served to all of the schools, but particularly year 4 and year, feedback was taken from them, and photographs of their meals were taken before and after they'd eaten to see what they'd actually eaten on the plate. And we also measured the food waste. So we had our own bean bin, and we could scrape the beans into that. So we knew how many grams that had been started with through the cook, and then we knew how much we had left. And there was, you know, we'll be able to tell what the favourites were and how the children enjoyed eating the meals as well once we've analysed all that research. And then it took place over about a 5-month period as well, all that the intensive research in schools. So we worked, like with the 6 schools, they're in 3 were in the city and 3 were in the county. We worked across their 2 separate authorities. They're ethnically and culturally diverse as well. There was 2 food plans we worked within the city and the county, and 2 caterers, so the 2 local authority caterers in the city and the county. We together with Food for Life, we trained the teachers in year 5, because they were our comparative group, and I delivered lessons directly into the year 5. And what we were seeing there was do interventions that actually help with children's take up of the school meals and eating the beans with the year 5 students. And we didn't do any of the interventions in the classroom with the year 4 pupils as well. So again, that will give us some further data to see how good the interventions were, if they make a difference in school. We've also worked with 10 families with Hertfordshire University, and we gave we had some training cooking eat sessions in schools with the families, and then the research took part in their homes as well, looking at how they could manage with what sort of facilities they had, if they could use the dried beans and how they were using them, if the rest of the family were eating them. And so that, again, that's going to be really informative. And we had a game designed as well, which I'll talk about. This was all together with a co-design process within the two local authority and city and county areas. And we had workshops with those different areas as well. And also trying to look at that policy from local policy, even to do with, with school meals, with procurement, but not just that, looking at within the food plans, and there's farming in the area. I know Glasgow's a city, so we had the difference between the city and the county and how those policies differed as well. And then this is our lovely bean. So Beantopia game. We worked with 100 children to develop this as a co-design process with 18 schools, and we worked with a games designer, Joanne Craven, and you can see on the one photograph how it started with their ideas on the food system using beans, and that's really just their ideas and drawings. We set them all either side of the paper and said to them, this is the food system, this is what you are, go ahead and draw that. And think about a game. The next sort of step and co-design process is about looking at that game and what they wanted in a game. And they really were quite, tough in that they wanted somewhere where one card that they had would take away everyone else's beans. And so it was really interesting and a fun process as well to go through with the children. And then we had the game developed, and on the cards you can see there, those were actual photographs of the meals that had been made in schools as well. And we had beans as counters, and they could collect them and swap them. So it was a Beantopia, as it says the title, and it was great fun. When we tried it the first time with the pupils in year 5, we people say, children all play with electronic games now, and it's this and that, and spend a lot of time. But we actually found that there was an hour full of full-on session with just playing the games. In fact, one school, they had to go for break time, and they would ask him to stay and play the game for longer. So it does show that, children still like a board game as well. And that's our contact details, but I know they'll be sent to us. We have a film coming out on a household work on the 10th of February, which is the World Pulse Day. That's it. So look out for the social media on that. And there's some lovely recipes on that as well, with the families cooking them.
So it's great to know there's so much inspiring work happening in the UK, and it's amazing to be able to use the bean to describe the whole food system to children. It's a really useful teaching tool. I'm also pleased to announce that both Beans is How and Bean Meals have agreed to join our Glasgow campaign, and they will advise us and tell us about the learnings that they've had from their campaigns and projects, and we are also able to share some of their resources as part of our local campaign. So we can, you will now hear about our plans here in Glasgow. There's a small team of just 3 of us behind the campaign, and I'm pleased to introduce you to my colleague Jenny McGilvery, who's a community activator from the Food and Climate Action Project, Glasgow Community Food Network. And Jenny is a big part of the reason this campaign came to Glasgow, and I will now hand over to her.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Jenny McGilvery, and I'm part of the Food and Climate Action team at Glasgow Community Food Network. The Food and Climate Action Project began in 2021 and is a partnership of various organisations across Glasgow working to inspire people to learn about and transform the food system together. Yes, so last year I started an online training program with the slow food movement. And it was learning about the protein transition, so how we can transition to different forms of protein in our diets. And it was also learning about local food systems and engaging people with that. So when I finished the training program, there was a chance to go to Tuscany to attend a slow beans event over 3 days in Italy. And so I was really lucky to get to attend that. And as part of this trip, I met lots of people passionate about legumes, and this was really my first introduction to the world of beans, and lots of people who do believe that legumes can change the world. So I'm going to talk a bit about my trip and some of the highlights, and then a bit about the Glasgow campaign and the ideas we have for that. So during the visit, we got to hear from many different people. It was attended by people from all over Europe and the States as well. And one of the visits was to a canteen, which was supplying 4 different schools with their school meals. And I was very impressed by the kitchens, their equipment. It was all very large scale, but they sourced 85% of their food was organic, and they had a target of 100%. And due to being such a big customer and regular, like they had a regular requirement for a lot of ingredients, they were able to work closely with farmers and producers and influence their practices. So they were able to influence some local producers to convert to organic. They also worked with children and in the schools to show them where their food came from, and get them involved in developing the menus and tasting the dishes. And obviously a part of that was beans and using local varieties that were grown very locally. So then we also got to attend a slow food producers market, and this had a big focus on beans and all sorts of legumes and things that I'd never thought of before, like lupin seeds. They'd made chocolate from lupin seeds. They had edamame beans from Germany. They had various local Tuscan varieties of beans, Latvian big grey peas. It was just, yeah, it was very interesting to see all that. I also found that Italy grows chickpeas and black chickpeas as well. So the following day was fun because we got to actually taste the beans from the producers, and then we had to rank them and choose our favorite bean, and the winner would be the producer of the bean. It's not the cook or chef. So I got to taste lots of different beans, and my favorite was actually a lovely chickpea and chestnut dish, which was very simply cooked with olive oil and herbs. And that was great. And then the winner of the bean, later on we celebrated, and they won. There was lots of prizes, and there was a real feeling of celebrating the bean as a gourmet food. So apart from these 2 sort of big events, we were also busy in workshops, hearing from different speakers and having lots of chats about beans. And we heard from the Global Bean Project, who talked about how to cultivate beans and some of the challenges involved in that. The two sort of main things that I took away and brought home from the trip that I wanted to replicate here was one, the involvement of children in choosing and developing their school meals and eating more beans, and two, to replicate to encourage more people to have a go at growing their own beans for drying, and maybe to experiment with more diverse, different varieties of beans, different types of beans, as that doesn't, and growing beans for drying doesn't seem to be that common here among small scale growers and allotment holders. At least from what I've seen, people tend to stick to sort of fresh green beans and broad beans, but I thought, I wondered if we could really contribute to community resilience and household resilience by having beans for storing over winter. They're good to go in winter stews, and it also sort of helps to spread out the harvest. When you can store food over winter, you avoid having a big glut of food in the summer that you're not able to use fully, and then a big hungry gap lasting through the winter. And then, so I got back to Glasgow and was talking to Rika, and she immediately got really excited as well. And then the idea for a local campaign in Glasgow came about. And then we discovered loads of other people were passionate about beans too, and lots of partners have already come on board, and we're getting this national and global support as well. We're a small team, but we're well connected, and we found lots of partners that are more than happy to come on board and support what we're trying to do. And so we want to channel all that enthusiasm down to the well, not down, but across to the general public, and get more people on the bean wagon. Now, there's two sort of challenges that we anticipate when it comes to transferring the enthusiasm about beans. So one is the availability of locally produced or even UK grown beans. So Lisa mentioned a couple of varieties that are now being developed, but as a general rule, while beans are often grown on commercially, they're often used as a cover crop or as animal fodder rather than for human consumption. So we'd like that to change. And two is the perception of beans, or maybe the restricted idea of what beans are. So in general, there's not enough fruit and veg eaten in this country, as we know, and beans are part of that as well. And there's also a tradition of very much eating tinned and baked beans, and not the full variety of beans that are available. So we just want to make beans fun and emphasize that they're a great food for filling your belly on a tight budget. And as you can see, like, Talia's developed these very fun visuals, which has really helps to communicate that they're fun. So the aims of the campaign, to get onto the campaign aims, is to share information on the environmental and health benefits of growing beans, demonstrating how to grow and cook beans. So we've got planning growing workshops and sharing recipes. We're also involving caterers. That includes school caterers, to include more bean-based dishes on the menu. A social media campaign to involve the general public, to get involved. and a growing project which will distribute seeds to growers and to encourage people to grow a more diverse range of beans and make them available locally. So this is to give you a flavour of the things that we've already planned for the campaign. So there are things happening throughout the year. For instance, Glasgow Community Food Network, they already run regular networking events. So we're having a bean takeover next month, February. This webinar will become a podcast episode. We will also involve chefs and caterers, have a menu challenge, and produce toolkits specifically for chefs, schools, and growers, and also a communications toolkit. So the visuals that we've developed, the social media tips for social media, and all that will be available open source. We will have retailers on board who will be offering promotions on beans. And then in partnership with Glasgow Seed Library, we'll have an event where we'll be giving out bean seeds, encouraging people to take them home and grow them, maybe try a new variety of bean, and then to save the seed. And this will create our own locally adapted Glasgow Seed Bank. And Glasgow Seed Library also provide starter packs for seed saving, and these will include beans. So this is, as we're such a small team, we are relying on partnership working and encouraging others to run their own bean-focused projects. And we will be using the Climate Fringe calendar to advertise other people's events. Any events that are being run to do with beans this year can be posted up on there. And finally, there will be a legacy of a website full of resources, a bean book bringing together all the highlights, the recipes, and the growing project, and the toolkits will be available. So the Humble Bean works across the whole food system to bring people together. So whether you're a community project or a school teacher or parent or a retailer or a chef, there is a way to get involved in the campaign. So now I'll pass over to Rika, and we'll talk about how this campaign relates to the City Food Plan and national policies.
Thanks so much, Jenny. As you have heard, beans provide an amazing number of both health and environmental benefits, and they can in fact be linked to some of our local policies. Glasgow has something called the Glasgow City Food Plan. It's a 10-year plan which was launched in 2021, and you can, on the screen now, you can see the long-term aims of our plan, and the campaign links to this plan in various different ways. For example, the low cost of beans can be linked to improved access to healthy, affordable food and possibly reduced food insecurity. And there will hopefully be increased understanding of the food system through our education programs in community, and hopefully we can also learn from our national partners as well. There'll be many ways for community participation. So if any of you listening are from community projects, please follow us on social media and come to that networking event on the 23rd of February. The campaign will also promote participating local food businesses and markets who are taking part. And we're also inviting market gardens and community projects to grow their own beans, which we hope will have in small way can lead to increased amount of locally grown sustainable food, and all of these things together we hope in turn will lead to increased consumption of healthy beans and hopefully improved health and well-being in some capacity. In addition, the campaign also aligns with the Scotland's Good Food Nation ambition. It's something that the Scottish government actually just announced another consultation for that last week. And I'm really pleased to announce that the Scottish government has actually decided to endorse the campaign as a cost-effective way to eat more nutritious diet, at the same time supporting a sustainable food system. And the Scottish government encourages people and organizations across Glasgow to take part in our local campaign. We are also part of the Sustainable Food Places Network, and some of the Scottish people, other cities from Scotland have already asked if there's a way that they can get involved as well. So we can share some of our learnings from this campaign, and also the campaign, the learnings from abroad and elsewhere in the UK as well. And as Jenny told you before, there are plenty of ways to get involved in the campaign, and we are doing our very best to make this campaign as accessible as possible. This is why we have already partnered up with some organizations. You can see our partners so far listed on this slide. So the Beans is How campaign, as you've already heard, will provide access to their global campaign resources. Bean Meals will keep us informed of their latest research on incorporating UK beans into the school menus. And Slow Food Glasgow will promote the campaign locally, and our team will continue to disseminate learning and resources from the global Slow Beans network that Jenny is connected to. The Food for Life Served Here Soil Association Scotland has already started working with the Glasgow City Council catering team, which is really exciting. Together, they are exploring the best ways to incorporate more beans onto school menus. So you will hear more about that in the coming months. The Glasgow City Council School Education Team will link us with relevant cultural departments and parents groups to be able to spread the message about the campaign quite widely, and also help our team put on some bean-related activities to school children as well as communities. The Green City Whole Foods wholesaler is already working with some suppliers to put special bean promotions on during the campaign, and the details of this will be announced quite soon. We are also working to get some local retailers and restaurants on board with the campaign as ambassadors to promote the campaign and put some beans on the menu and on the shop shelves. Also, finally, the Glasgow Seed Library will help people get a hold of beans for growing, and details of this will be announced on social media in the coming months. So if you're interested in partnering with us, it's actually not too late. We're actively looking for other partners and funders to allow the campaign to have maximum impact and to allow more people and communities to get involved. And we have created a campaign page, and all the details are on the website. We will also circulate all the slides, so don't worry if you don't you don't need to look it up just now. It will include links to all our campaign resources. There will be blogs by our partners. There's one there, at least one there already, and there will be the communications toolkit that Jenny mentioned earlier. In the next few weeks, we'll be also working on a toolkit on how different sectors can get involved as well. And Jenny's already mentioned the campaign event on the 23rd. So just make sure if you want to get involved in the campaign locally, make sure you follow us on social media so that you're the first one to hear about any local campaign events. And you can find all the links on this slide and the chat. And I'm sure I hope the audience has some questions for our speakers. And I'm pleased to invite Thalia Krukot to join us as well. Thalia is our Good Food Movement Coordinator from the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, and she looks after all the communications for this campaign. I will also invite the other speakers to join me and Thalia will ask questions, and this will also be turned into a podcast series for any people who are interested and could not make it along today.
Yeah, thank you, Rika. So as Rika said, I'll be asking the questions today. So please do continue to pop any questions that come to you as we're chatting into the Q&A function. First of all, even though we're in late January and it feels like the festive period is far behind us, there is a holiday coming up, which is World Pulses Day on the 10th of February. So I just wanted to ask, first of all, our speakers what their plans are for World Pulses Day and how they're planning to mark the day this year. So I'll go to Lisa first.
Hi, yeah, we've been filming with some of our households that we worked with. We gave them the beans and they've been using them in their homes as part of the research. But the film really will be highlighting showing some of the recipes and having their voices, what they think about the beans and how they've incorporated them into their cooking and what their views are. So we'll be launching that probably just before or maybe just after, because it's a Saturday as well. But that's one of the things we're looking at. And also we're looking at a farm as well, local farm, and who has a cafe, and they will be serving the beans and looking at incorporating them into Pancake Day, which is the same week as well. So we'll have a lot of interesting things and recipes coming out that week, and forwardings in Leicester. It will be our half term as well.
Wow,
So it won't just be for the day.
I wouldn't have thought of that, beans with pancakes, but that's definitely one to try. I know we can get bean flour, so maybe that's an easy way to incorporate beans in there. Kristen, what about you? How are you marking World Pulses Day over at Beans' How?
So we're very excited to be launching our first annual report on World Pulses Day. So I gave you the sneak peek on some of our achievements, but we have a lot of case studies in there. So I do encourage you to follow our socials and to visit our website to download that report and read it. There's so many exciting examples of how mostly our partner network has been activating around beans. And then we'll also be supporting our network with any events that they have, and also just flying the bean flag as loud and proud as possible.
As we will be too. So I suggest anyone that's interested in finding out more, definitely keep an eye out for those posts on World Pulses Day, because we'll be sharing a lot of different things as well. One question that we've received, which I think is really important and has also really informed kind of our choice in pursuing this campaign in Glasgow, is a question asking for suggestions to those who are experiencing food poverty and how they can incorporate beans into their diets. So if we have any ideas for maybe different kind of affordable meals that include beans, and how this can be accessed by everyone.
We'd worked with our families a lot around this issue, and our beans, the Godiva and Capula beans, are a dried product, which does mean soaking and then boiling them. They are a short soak, but it was something the families mentioned, was that it was difficult because of fuel poverty as well to have that. But it's sort of, with the for 2 hours on the hob. So one of the quicker ways is really some of our Asian families who are used to working with dried beans and dried pulses. They use pressure cookers a lot, and it shortens the time, not even half, less than half. And I've now adopted that in my way of cooking with the dried beans as well. It's transformed the time and the way I cook. And regardless of our beans, other dried products, chickpeas and things like that, are cheaper if you can buy them in bulk in dried form. But then it is about that, having the correct sort of process. And one of our learnings is that pressure cookers are the way forward, and they use less energy to cook. So that's one of our ways that we worked with the families and we've learned from our families as well.
Yeah, just to add that they are so nutrient dense and they are actually cost effective and can be purchased dried, jarred, canned. So there's many different ways that you can buy it, and they are, for the most in most scenarios an affordable protein. We are finding that, this is really a localized situational kind of thing. So in many countries, actually, they are not affordable. So we are careful about how we speak about the affordability. But yes, Lisa really answered that question as well.
And I also just want to add from the perspective of our campaign in Glasgow that it's definitely, we're aware that food insecurity is an increasing problem and we're still in the midst of a cost of living crisis. And that I know from my interactions with food pantries or with smaller food provision projects that they're still seeing a rise in their user numbers week on week, and they're still seeing that increase. And Rika is maybe going to add a little bit about how we're planning to work more with those kind of food provision services in Glasgow. I know we have ideas to supply recipe cards, to work with food pantries, and to think a bit more about how we can definitely make those accessible and really take those steps to make sure we're including a range of different groups in Glasgow. Rika, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I was going to mention the pantries. Pantries in the Scottish Pantry Network is really interested in this campaign, and they have already asked for recipe cards, and our plan is to get some recipe cards printed, funding allowing that. And just to touch on what both Lisa and Christine already said, obviously, the dried beans are the most cost-effective way to purchase beans, but not necessarily when you take all the cooking and energy into account as well. So, our campaign can promote beans in all of their forms, not just the dried beans, but also the canned beans, which are obviously easier for people to access and make meals from as well. So we hope to provide recipes in, for various different types of beans. We are also linking up, there will be some promotions from wholesalers during this campaign. I don't have the exact details of those promotions yet, but we are hoping that they would actually then help people purchase some of the beans as well. Also, we will hope to put on some, we will hope to link up with community organizations and get them to put on their own events. And it's obviously quite a cost-effective way to put on community meals when you actually have a bean-based meal rather than some more expensive ingredients. So we think it's a really good way to, it's quite timely at the moment that, we concentrate on food that is really cost effective.
Absolutely, and that definitely has informed the way that we're thinking about the campaign. I want to ask a question to you, Kristen, because I was really interested in what you said around that we don't have figures on global bean consumption since 2016. And I was wondering, for your work specifically and that goal of trying to double bean consumption by 2028, what are some of the challenges around that when it's quite hard to know how many beans people are consuming at the moment? Could you just maybe talk us through a bit about how you understand the levels of bean consumption and how you're championing that at the moment?
Yeah, so that data comes really from all of the amazing work that was put into through the International Year Pulses. And so I believe that was the reason there was a huge survey that kind of pulled together all of that information. But, major global surveys like that are expensive and hard to actually do. So what we're leaning on right now is representational surveys from, country data that has been coming in. We have the Diet Quality Index that we've been looking at from Gallup, for example. And we are trying to champion this as one of our messages, that we really do want to continue partnering with institutions like University of Oxford and others to inspire more research, about consumption, about behavior change initiatives, to track the effectiveness of some of our campaigning and others that are happening around the world. So we're very excited to also partner with Lisa's team to co-champion this message. And we're hoping to see, this change and more attention to pulses and more traction and funding go to pulses over the next 5 years.
That's great to hear, especially from our perspective, and that we're just setting off on this journey to get more beans on Glasgow plates as well. We've received a question about the possible benefits of beans and pulses in waste reduction, and how, as well as kind of being something that can be sustainably grown and as an alternative to other proteins, maybe how they could contribute to the sustainable development goal 12.3 of reducing food waste. I wonder, Lisa, you were talking about scraping the beans into bins, and obviously Christian, you're from the Sustainable Development Goals to Advocacy Hub. So I'm just wondering, kind of within that mindset, how do we think beans could possibly reduce our food waste? Or even, do we have any ideas for, if you do have leftover beans, what they can be used for, and maybe reduce that plate waste at the end?
What's interesting about the food waste in schools was when we started to look at it, you know, it's interesting to actually get children involved in that process of what happens. You know, the food system doesn't end on your plate. The food system goes towards, you know, your food waste, and then where does it go after that, and the environmental impact of that food waste, and you know, the carbon that's released and things like that. So I think there's a little bit more of an education about the food system that, like I said, doesn't end on your plate. And the children were really interested and sort of understood that quite quickly. And it also, when you get to know, we understand, you know, where food comes from and that journey that it's had to take, and understand the environmental impact of a lot of food, it makes you appreciate food more, and not to sort of have that waste, you know, at the end. If it's nutritious, if it's healthy, if it's tasty, then you will eat it. So I think it's going back to that basis as well. And again, with my work in schools with children, it's important to have that ownership, because they feel more, they're more likely to try something new and eat it and not waste it as well. So one of the, you know, the theories about is having children, once they've grown food themselves, once they've cooked with food, they're more likely to eat it, and especially new food. So it is quite, you know, we're talking about change behaviour when we're trying to get children to try new foods, even adults trying different things. If they haven't, they're just used to baked beans, and we want them to eat more of a variety of beans. Then it's about getting them to try things as well, and it's how you do that and looking at that behaviour. When you look at that community level, a lot of it is just about taking away those worries about how to cook beans, and worried about what they're going to put them in, and having a good recipe. Is it going to work? Am I going to cook it for my family and then no one's going to eat it at all? You know, and it's just giving people sort of confidence really as well, and making sure that people are enjoying the taste of beans and what they're doing with them.
I think that was perfect, and you gave some answers that I think not only think about beans and food waste, but also food waste generally. And I think that's a great point, that yeah, we're not going to waste food if it's really tasty and we want to finish what we've got on our plates. Rika, I saw you had a hand.
Thanks, Talia. It's a really interesting point. I have to say, our Glasgow team wasn't really thinking about the food waste aspect at all. Obviously, I knew that, you know, the Bean Meals project is measuring food waste in schools, which is super interesting, and we hope to learn from that. But it is very, very true that the beans have a long shelf life. They are not perishable. You know, dried beans, they, you know, you can store them for a really long time. And same thing with canned beans as well. So, you know, if that maybe goes back to the previous question about how beans can help alleviate food poverty. Well, it's actually, you know, if you buy dried or canned beans, you know that they're not going to go off anytime soon. So you can actually, you know, it will probably help you budget as well. And, you know, if you have a can of beans in your cupboard somewhere, you always have something to eat. So I don't know if Jenny has anything to add.
Well, I was just thinking about my own family and trying to get them to eat more beans. and they are very habituated to baked beans as well. And my problem with trying to eat more beans is just cooking for them. They won't accept it. So, but my idea was to gradually move from, so have the tinned baked beans, but start adding like different flavors in, maybe like some spices or some soy sauce, or just sort of gradually transition away from that to making my own homemade baked beans, because I have seen some nice like American recipes from the South where they have a tradition of eating homemade baked beans with lots of yummy flavors in there. And it's just and it tastes and it's frustrating because it tastes great, but it's just getting them to accept it and to try it is the challenge. And they did talk about that in Italy, that there was, even there, we think it has an amazing food culture, but even there it was seen as a challenging food to educate people and children, get them to try it, and then the parents thinking of it as more of a low class food, or not as good as meat. So it was just like emphasizing the taste and making it really tasty and it's good quality, as you say.
Back to Lisa, do you have another point to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, it some of the time in the schools, we got to the point where, and with the families, sometimes you've got to start where people are. So if that's what they're used to, there's no point in trying, a new bean or a new different the butter bean they've never tried before. But if they're really quite resistant, it's about having things. We made them beans into a pasta sauce, and also we put sauce on pizzas. And when we were looking at the when we were doing the research in the schools, and actually there in the day, we would tell the children that, I remember going to class and saying, well, and the beans today are going to be in your pizza, and the faces were horrified because I think they thought we would put them on top like an olive or something. I'm like, what? And then after an hour, and then they'd gone to lunch, they completely forgotten what I'd said an hour ago, and they're eating it. And I said, did you enjoy the beans? And I just thought, wait, what beans? Where? They were in the pizza. So, sometimes you've got to health by stealth. Sometimes is especially with children, and then they get used to that. Well, you've eaten them before, it can be quite a process. but there's ways of working with that, and like I say, starting where families, or your own family, your own children, starting where they're from, like you said, Jenny, about maybe even adding some into the bean the sauce that they're recognized, and then slowly moving away from that as well.
I definitely, just to say that, we also are combating the misperception, or the kind of the feeling that it is a poor person's food. And so in many locations, so trying to really change the perception of beans as something desirable and make them visible, I think will also help with reducing food waste as well, because people will value them in a way.
And that actually leads me on really nicely to my next question, which is around, I just wonder around, seeing beans as desirable. I was wondering, Kristen, with your work to get more beans on the menu, how do you think we can make beans, something that's a bit more glamorous, something that we expect to see on a menu when we're going out to a restaurant to eat? And this also to me relates to the question of, instead of using beans as feed for animals, how do we see beans as the food itself, as the desirable thing that we want to be eating? So Christian, I wonder, in terms of your beans on the menu, how have you found that work with restaurants, and making them something that we expect to see?
So when we first had this idea, we kind of wanted to just run with it very quickly, but we said, we are very closely partnered with the Chef's Manifesto and many other food service and hospitality organizations. Let's have focus groups to really understand how this might activate. And we really learned that it's not a one size fit all. So whereas some of the canteens run by offices or by schools and hospitals and public procurement, they were championing the fact that it was a cost-saving measure as well as a wellness measure, and they were really excited to be able to look at how it affected their bottom line. But high-end restaurants were never going to talk about that. So they were actually telling us, we do have beans. Beans are in our spreads. Beans are in our sauces. We're using beans all the time. But we don't talk about it because people don't want to purchase a dish of beans because they perceive it as something that they either make themselves, or that, it's a kind of a home-cooked meal when you want to do something quickly, save some money, whatever. So how can we start to make them visible by putting them on the menu? And that's where the name kind of came from. It's just very literal. We want championing them. And so that's where working with chefs has been really fantastic, because chefs were excited to rise to the challenge. Oh, yes, I can put beans in desserts. I can put beans in cocktails. I can put beans in all sorts of places. And so now they can actually celebrate it as not just an ingredient, but a feature on the menu, and really start to kind of give them that visibility. The second thing we sort of learned is that having a focused set date where we activated around, such as the New York City Climate Week and the UNGA, where a lot of attention was already looking at the food systems and how people could get involved in creative ways, was great, because it gave a rallying point for these restaurants so that they could, maybe it is a seasonal ingredient for some of them, but that was a good time for New York, for example, to be able to say, oh yeah, we actually do have seasonal ingredients that are beans right now. It's good time. So they were able to sort of challenge each other to come up with a cool dish that could be a sort of carrot on a stick to get new customers on the board in the door, and then also to join a kind of growing list of people who were all, advocating for beans and their value in different ways. So in order to address kind of this myriad of possibilities, we created many different assets, and we don't have a requirement that they have to be used. So if a restaurant wants to sort of hide it, that's actually fine with us, but then they can share that they have, they're tracking their inventory, and they can share and say, actually, we have sold X amount more bean dishes or X amount quantity of beans. And that's been really great information that we can then collate and put into our kind of case studies and annual reports. So we have 4 priority countries that we're looking at over the next year. That's the UK, the US, Kenya, and India. Very chosen for all different scenarios. We definitely see partnerships with local governments, with restaurants, with schools, offices, and catering staff to be great partners in this space. And we're excited to see how we can roll this out and really innovate around the recipes that come out of it, and just all the way it shows up.
Yeah, that is really exciting, and I think a great kind of final message to end on. Keep your eyes peeled for beans on your menus, and also around Glasgow. I hope everyone here today has learned at least one new thing about beans, but I'm sure you've certainly gained some enthusiasm. I know I certainly have. And for all of those who are here today, thank you for coming, but this webinar will also be recorded and released as an episode of the Good Food for Glasgow podcast, so you can share it with anyone who wasn't able to make it along today. That link will be shared with you when it's ready. I think we got around to all of the questions that were answered, but if you do have any questions that occur to you later on as you're just kind of reflecting on all of this bean information, please do get in touch and we can forward those on to the relevant speaker. So finally, all that's left to say is a huge thank you to our speakers and to all of our attendees today. And as I said, we've learned a lot about beans, but we would also really welcome your feedback. This is the first in a series of webinars from Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, so any feedback that you do respond to the survey that will be part of our kind of post webinar email, that will go forward to inform our future events. So it's really valued and appreciated. And the very last thing to say is a huge thank you to Carol and all the team at Glasgow Centre for Population Health for all of their help in organising this webinar today. So I hope everyone has a lovely day and hopefully gets to eat some beans. So thank you, everybody.